Hey, how you guys doing? I hope things are well for you. I hope this podcast is delivering some value for you. Today, along that line, we're going to try to deliver some more value for you in that today's topic is going to talk about something that's very common among a bunch of people and probably you. And that topic is going to be the topic of stress and specifically how to reduce it. Go. Hey, welcome to the I Am Podcast, where we answer all the questions about spirituality and inner peace that you ever wanted to ask. I'm your host, Sean Webb. Okay, so today's topic is going to be about stress. But first, I'd like to do a little house cleaning because in the last week or two, we put up the buttons on the website for donations, and by golly, some people are using them. So I wanted to throw out a couple of quick thank yous to Lowell. Thank you very much to Chloe in Asia, John H, and Georgia. I will eat lunch happily and think of you while doing it. So I appreciate that. I appreciate those. If you guys are interested in using those donation buttons until we get some more products up that have value for you, then you can go to the webpage, iamspirituality.com, and use those. If you don't have any ability to make a donation, don't worry about it. This stuff is all free. I do this for the hopes that you can use it to increase your level of inner peace and happiness in your life, and so that you can help others do so. And so ultimately, we are working towards an eventual world peace. So let's get on to today's topic on that tack. And today's topic, we're going to discuss stress. Now, first, let's discuss an elementary definition of what is stress. If you remember the Body, Mind, Spirit 101, the equation of emotion is prominent within the Body, Mind, Spirit 101. And the equation of emotion is the thing that causes all of our emotional ups and downs, all of our emotions, period. This is based on what it is. Our expectation and our preference of anything, of something, as compared to our perception of that anything, be it an idea or an idea of our sense of self, etc. If these things are balanced, that creates positive emotion. If these things are unbalanced, it creates a negative emotion. And in the instance of these things being imbalanced for a long period of time, or a longer period of time, or an extended period of time, that causes stress. Now, we talked about our attachments of mind, right? Our body is right in the center. We have an idea of our attachment to our body. It's the thing we see when we look in our mirror. And then every one of our attachments creates an expectation or preference associated with that. And if you want to understand the neuroscience, you can pick up Dr. David Eagleman's book, Incognito, The Secret Lives of Our Brain. It explains basically all this stuff that I'm explaining to you from a neuroscience standpoint. Expectation and preference is how our brain works. And so then our reality is perceived, our perception comes in, and it gets compared to this expectation and a preference, and then we have an emotional reaction. Well, the imbalance of this is where our negative emotions come from. The balance of this is where our positive emotions come from. The imbalance of this on an extended time frame is stress. If you are angry about something for a minute or two, no big deal, you get over it. If you're angry about something from a chronic anger perspective, that causes stress within your mind and within your body. If you are sad about something for a short period of time and you get over it, no big deal. If you are sad about something for an extended period of time, that causes stress. It's a long-term imbalance in the equation of emotion. If you're fearful about something for just a minute, like a spider, and then he goes away or you get out of the way or whatever, no big deal. If you're fearful about whatever for a long period of time, fearful that someone around you with a dire illness is going to keel over, that causes stress. That longer term imbalance in the equation of emotion is what causes stress. Anytime you are feeling stress, it is because you have an expectation or preference that is not being met by your perception of the world, whatever the world's giving to you, what you see that the world's giving to you in relation to that expectation or preference. There is a long-term imbalance there. There is a long-term issue, a longer-term issue. It can be, minutes, days, months, years. But the stress is the result of the imbalance in the equation of emotion, okay? Now, this can happen in the body as well. This model works at the cellular level as well, because when you're talking about weight, extra weight on our body causing stress to our system, or you're talking about eating something that's not good for us causing stress to our system, taking in too much caffeine on a daily basis when you haven't built up a tolerance for it will create a great deal of stress in your body. If you drink 6 cups of coffee, from going from not having a cup of coffee in 6 months to drinking 6 in one day, it's going to cause an immense amount of stress in your body. Well, that at a cellular level is your body's expectation and or preference of not having that much caffeine in your system. Being confronted with a boatload of caffeine in your system causes a great deal of stress. It's an imbalance in the equation of emotion. Remember, this is how biology works, right? And so in turn, this is how we work. This is how our mind works. So at any point that there is an imbalance in the equation of emotion, you're going to feel stress. So that is the basic definition of stress. You will never be able to redefine it any better than that, because basically it's a very simple definition. It cannot be reduced to any further components. So let's talk about some examples for a second. Let's say you are barely making ends meet. You're not getting the money in your paycheck that you think you deserve. So your expectation and or preference would be that you would get paid more money. Every time you get that paycheck that is less money than you would like to see, and that is barely enough to cover the bills, or maybe it's not enough to cover the bills, all of a sudden you have a great opportunity for stress, because you have a long-term situation where your expectation and or preference is not being met by your perception that the world is giving you, or how you are seeing the world. And so that is causing you a great deal of stress. Why is stress important? Why is taking control of these situations important? Well, because stress is potentially the reason for up to 90% of the hospital visits that exist here in the United States, and probably mostly in the Western world, and even probably globally, although we only have the numbers for the Western world here. Stress is the thing that causes most of the hospital visits. When you're talking about heart disease, you're talking about high blood pressure, you're talking about the potential for stroke, you're talking about, things like sicknesses, illnesses, cancer, that type of thing. You have these genetics, right? So you have the potential for you to have cancer in your body, but cancer isn't turned on until you put something else into the equation, the epigenetics. The thing that's above the genetics that turns on the genes that you have in your body to create wellness or illness. And so stress is that actuator that makes all the bad stuff happen, typically. I mean, it creates cortisol and other stress hormones in your system, and cortisol is nothing but bad news to our personal existences. Cortisol increases your stress levels, but it kills your brain cells. So if you're worried about your brain activity and your cognitive capabilities later on in life, you definitely want to reduce your stress levels now, because as you kill your brain cells with this cortisol, that's not good for your future brain capacity. Cortisol can literally turn on your cancer genes if you have them, creating the perfect environment for you to grow and have cancer flourish in your body. It represses the immune system. It represses insulin, which is another factor in health, because insulin helps decide what gets turned into fat and what gets burned, what can be burned in energy utilization, right? So if you have a high level of cortisol, a high level of stress in your body, you'd be putting on fat by no fault of your own, by no change in your diet, by no change in the calories, by no change in your exercise, your stress, your mindful reaction will make you fat or keep you fat if you're trying to lose weight. So reducing stress is of utmost importance. Stress, increases blood pressure. It creates heart disease. It has all kinds of issues from a health perspective. And then from a mental perspective, from a mindful perspective, when you're talking about having stress, you're talking about having a focus on negative emotions subconsciously. You're talking about having a focus of your mind being preoccupied with whatever's wrong in your life. And so that's going to create ill for your mind and your body. So that's why we need to attack stress. And we understand the definition of stress. So let's now talk about how we can reduce stress. Okay, so the first step, of course, is obviously to understand that stress is an imbalance in the equation of emotion. If you're feeling stress or stressed about something, you can ask yourself these two questions. What is the expectation or preference that I'm holding, consciously or subconsciously? And what is the perception that's rubbing up against that expectation or preference causing the stress? What is the underlying problem? Because Psychology 101, and specifically a couple of studies in 2007 from UCLA, prove that when you start to step outside of that sphere of influence of your emotions and you start to look at your emotions objectively, you start to look at the components that come together to make your emotions, and you name your emotions, then you are less affected by them. So simply the process of reviewing your own equation of emotion, that's what's causing you the stress, that will reduce the level of stress that you're feeling, or at least help you get a better handle on it, which will, as studies have shown and through fMRI, it'll help shut down the limbic system much quicker in your analysis of the imbalance in the equation of emotion. So that's step one. Step two is doing that over and over to be able to identify, what emotion you're having, why you're having it, and then creating a plasticity that allows you to jump into that mode of the observer that much quicker next time. Because plasticity, as Harvard University Medical School and and Massachusetts General Hospital, a number of studies by these guys up there who are focused on meditation and mindfulness and reducing stress, etc., they proved that plasticity can occur in as little as 8 weeks in meditation groups. And so anything that you do with your brain more often is going to change the structure of your brain to make it happen much easier as we go along. So as we step outside of our sphere of influence of the emotional stuff and we look at it from the outside, the more we do it, the easier that becomes over and over and over again, because we're doing it just like we are at the gym. When we work our muscles, the muscles get bigger. When we work our brain in a certain way, the brain strengthens itself in that way so as to be able to utilize that function much easier. Now, on that same line, when we're talking about plasticity and we're talking about stress reduction, meditation as a third step, clearing our minds of the noise, of the high anxiety thoughts that we have, can also reduce our stress levels, as proven by countless studies at this point. A number of studies have proven that when you sit down and you meditate for 20 minutes a day, twice a day, in fact, there was a 10-year study recently done that just concluded that they had two groups of people. One group was told to, okay, we want you to meditate 20 minutes a day, twice a day, and then basically that's it. And then they had another group of folks that they said, okay, we want you to eat right and exercise over the next 10 years. And the two groups, as compared 10 years later, the folks that are eating right and exercising had a certain number of heart attacks and strokes. And the people who were meditating twice a day for 20 minutes had 66% less heart attacks and strokes. And this is for all the other distractors removed, right? You have all basically the same group of folks doing the same type of lifestyle. And these folks are meditating and these folks are eating right and exercising. And the meditators have 66% less heart attack and stroke because their stress levels are reduced that amount. Now, if you can't meditate 20 minutes twice a day, every day, don't worry about it, because there was a third group that wanted to meditate 20 minutes a day, twice a day, and couldn't get it done and wound up meditating 20 minutes a day, like maybe 6 times a week, which is still a lot. That group, in comparison to the eat right and exercise group, that group had a 50% less reduction on strokes and heart attacks than the eat right and exercise folks. So the line of plasticity when you're meditating and you're reducing your stress over that short period of time that you're meditating, because of plasticity, you're also reducing the level of stress that you exhibit and that you experience over a long period of time. You are strengthening the muscles of your brain to allow it to exist in a lower stress environment perpetually and to let the things go. Because if you think about it, stress is a result of an imbalanced equation of emotion. When you're thinking about things, either consciously or subconsciously, you have an attachment, conscious or subconscious, you have a perception, conscious or subconscious, and you could be feeling stress from a subconscious level because your brain is just comparing these two things that are imbalanced. Your life situation isn't what it should be or what you would like it to be. Your weight situation isn't what you would like it to be. Your personal life situation, your marriage, your relationship with others isn't what you would like it to be. All these can create long-term stress. And so if you're thinking about it consciously or subconsciously, it's going to cause stress. Well, at the point that you're meditating and you're not thinking about anything, how can you exhibit any stress at all? Because stress is a mental and sometimes physical reaction. But if you're not thinking, if you're not processing those thoughts and processing the equation of emotion, of course you're going to feel less stress, because you're not putting the variables in place to create that stress. And so that's why people, of course, report a low level of stress when they're meditating and exhibit a lower level of stress in studies and in research. And that's why people are living longer and they're increasing their cognitive capabilities through reducing their stress, and they're getting more done in a workday, because there are a lot of studies that show that you can get 33% more done in a day if you're more calm, more focused, and lower stress level in the work environment. And so by understanding our process, by understanding how stress comes to be, by stepping away from it and witnessing it, we're separated by it. By making the changes in plasticity in our brain to help us deal with stress, we can actually increase the lengths of our lives, increase the quality of our life in general, both at a young age and at an older age. The longer you reduce stress, the longer those wear and tear issues on your body and on your mind and on your existence are going to be pushed off into the future, and you're going to have a higher quality of life as you grow older. Now, if you're younger, you're thinking, oh, I'm immortal, I'm awesome, that stuff isn't going to happen to me. It's going to happen to you eventually. You're going to be 80 someday, and you want to be in great health when you're 80. Man, we had an awesome time with Grandma Hannah when we were like late teenagers going to Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, and Grandma Hannah was right there with us, 80 years old, going on all of the roller coasters. She had energy to spare. She was running us teenagers into the ground on her energy level all day. I don't know if she was coked out of her mind or what it was. She was the sweetest old lady ever, but she was like 80 years old, keeping up with all of us teenagers at an amusement park with all the rides and everything thrown in, because She was a happy-go-lucky, very spirited, young in spirit person that her body wasn't falling apart to the level that other 80 octogenarians' bodies were. Now, I don't have any scientific evidence that says she had a lower stress level, but she was nothing but bubbly and joking and laughing and yada, yada, yada. And so I couldn't imagine Grandma Hannah ever experiencing a high level of stress, but because she just blew everything off. It was awesome. It was definitely a good life lesson. So, if you want to be that person who is older and who has the energy and who is healthy, or next week or next month or 8 weeks from now, you're changing your brain if you start today. If you want to be that person, do the meditation. Do the internal analysis of why your stress exists. Look at the components that exist to create your stress. What is your expectation and a preference and your perception that aren't meeting over a long period of time? Change one of those things. You can change your perception about stuff. You can change your expectation or preferences about things, or you can change your life in general to create different variables on both sides of the equation. Okay? Take a look at that stuff, because your stress is literally killing you slowly, and it's making your life suck, even if you don't know it, even if it's happening subconsciously. So, if you have any questions about stress or any issues or any ideas or stuff that I missed, send it in. Sean at IamSpirituality.com. I hope things are well for you guys today. I love you. Hit the donate buttons on the website if you wish. You can also support us by going to Audible to get your free audiobook. That's audibletrial.com/IamSpirituality. You get a free audiobook of your choosing. I suggested Antonio Damasio's book last week, but there are a number of books that explain the neurobiology of all the stuff that we're talking about here that's just right in line with everything that we're teaching. For instance, David Eagleman's book, Incognito, The Secret Lives of Your Brain. Richard Davidson's book, The Emotional Life of Your Brain. Great book to pick up to explain some of the neuroscience behind the stuff that we're teaching here. This is it. This is your place to reduce your stress, to get control of your negative emotions, to increase your mindfulness, and to increase your emotional intelligence. So you guys have a great week. Talk to you soon. Peace.